Welcome back to another edition of the Great Lakes Divide podcast. It's brought to you by the Record Lounge in Rio Town. That's East Lansing, just south on Washington from I-496. He's a resident of East Lansing, but he's a University of Michigan grad. Of course, joining me, Tom Crawford. I'm Ryan Schuling, breaking down both Michigan and Michigan State from a week ago. We did that in our past podcast. We'll reflect briefly and then look forward to week 2 action. Already on the docket, both teams going to be at home. Of course, the Michigan State Spartans coming off that 28-7 victory over Tulsa. Mark Dantonio with some terse words for his own offense, and he used the weekly press conference as the platform to express those views and send a message to his team. We'll have some of that sound coming up for you later in this podcast. Of course, Western Michigan next up on the docket. That'll be on Big Ten Network this Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time. That's 7:30 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. I say that, of course, because I'm back in Colorado, but live connected to Tom Crawford on the other end. He's in East Lansing in his man cave right now. The Wolverines, they'll be going first on Saturday. It's a noon start on Fox, and it's an interesting opponent in the Army Black Knights. But looking back quickly at their 40-21 victory over Middle Tennessee State, Tom Crawford, welcome back to it. I want to get your thoughts, your grades, offense, defense, special teams for Michigan off the top of your head. First instinct, go.
Okay. Well, I mean, overall, Ryan, just a lot of raw talent, fixable, quirky stuff, fixable issues. So overall, I'm very, very bullish on this 2019 Michigan team. But from a grade standpoint, and I guess and I'm kind of like kind of conservative in this regard. Offensively, I would give the offensive line, let's say, a B- if we're going to do in the minus pluses. I mean, they're missing 2 tackles. Obviously, Andrew Stuber on the right side is out for the season now, and Jalen Mayfield is now taking that position. They were pretty much head-to-head. But the surprise of the day, Ryan Hayes did a very good job at left tackle, and he's 6'8" and 300 pounds, and he could probably go 330 when he's done in the weight room. So that was good. But there's still some missed tackles, and they here and there, and I got to let him grow a little bit, offensively. I like the best takeaway though. The surprise element is the running back situation with Zach Charbonnet, 8 carries, 90 yards. Can you imagine if he carries 15 yards or 15 times, Ryan, or 20? I mean, he's really good. Christian Turner, I think, did a nice job. Drew Wilson, and back to Charbonnet, he blocked very well. So on offense, and then you have the situation with Shea Patterson, who was hurt on the first play. Some people said, pulled stomach, it was rib area, and he couldn't really throw that effectively. I mean, he played 60%, which is pretty good. Dylan McCaffrey came in a little bit. But so overall on the offense, the fact he was hurt and he missed some passes and he put the ball in the turf. He fumbled it on one play, lost it, and he put the ball in the turf 2 or 3 other times in the exchanges of the RPO. So I'm going to give the offense a B. What are your thoughts on that before I move over to defense?
Well, I want to talk about injuries, Tom. And this is where I'm concerned if I'm a Wolverines fan. You talk about Shea Patterson getting dinged up with the ribs. John Runyon was out. Donovan Peoples-Jones, walking boot. We already talked about Andrew Stuber being out for the year. I mean, these are already kind of building up for Michigan. Do they have the depth, in your opinion, to be able to plug and play and still have this offense go the way that you want it to?
Yeah, this is when the depth is paying off, because in particular a wide receiver. I mean, without Donovan Peoples-Jones, we saw what Nico Collins, Tariq Black do. Ronnie Bell needs to catch the ball. I mean, he ran some great routes. And Cornelius Johnson, the true freshman, that got a lot of people's attention, who's, he's a 4.25 guy. He can really get, not a 4.25, but a 4.44. I mean, he's a fast guy. Mm-hmm. And I think that people are going to like what they see in that regard. I think DPJ potentially could be back this week. If not, he'll be back after the bye week with Wisconsin. So I think that's fine. I think Shea's going to be fine. And there's some more people back when we flip over to the defense that are coming back too. So I think that it's just one of those things that the bye week in week 3 is going to be a good thing. Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy? Because once you get through Army, which is going to be another physical team, it's going to grind on you. Who knows if they acquire any more injuries.
And, of course, Michigan, as Tom is referencing, gets that bye after this Saturday's game against Army in preparation for a trip to Wisconsin to face the Badgers in Madison. Let's talk defense then, Tom. Your grade on them giving up 21 points to Middle Tennessee State. But let's start in a fair position. Turnover right out of the gate. Shea Patterson beating himself up over this after a 15-yard carry, short field. MTSU takes a brief lead. From there, the defense, how do you feel they did?
Well, I mean, they gave up, 300 total yards. They didn't, and the quarterback for MTSU, veteran kid, he's pretty elusive, and there were some missed tackles indeed. Overall, I'm in the neighborhood of a B because I didn't expect them to play that well in the secondary. I mean, they got some excellent play on all three levels, and the only guy that really struggled that I shouldn't have expected him to be effective was Ben Mason, who was playing on the inside. He's moved over from offense to defense, and he's out. He's only 272 pounds, which is not all that big. You know what I mean? But I thought that. He struggled a little bit and was overwhelmed, but I thought Josh Uche played well. Quiddy Pay, Carlo Kemp, all the guys up front. Aiden Hutchinson was an absolute stud. Those guys were good. Mike Dana, the transfer from Central, he did well. There's all these names I'm throwing at you because there are a lot of contributing guys on this defense. Jordan Glasgow, another Glasgow, just a football player out there, did a great job. He had I think he had 6 tackles. He had a couple of TFLs, so overall good, but once again, there were some missed tackles, and so I'm going to give them a B as well.
Special teams. I know in the past, this is an area that has driven Michigan fans nuts, not having an adequate place kicker, in particular kicking field goals, not having the most effective punter. Return game, usually solid, but all around on special teams, Tom, your takeaway, your grade for them.
Well, Will Hart was tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's start with him. He was really, really good. He was pinning him down. So they're all set at punter. Giles Jackson, the freshman return man, he did pretty good. He was decent. The problem, and I would give the special teams an A if Lavert Hill hadn't dropped the punt. I mean, and you can't do that. You can't put the ball on the ground. Then they moved Ronnie Bell back there, and the only reason Lavert Hill is back there is because Donovan Peoples-Jones was hurt. So if he comes back, that's going to be shored up. I'll give special teams because of the drop punt. I'll have to knock them off a little bit. I'll give them a B+.
So on the B range, on the B range, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Opening week, you expect there to be some kinks to iron out. We mentioned the injuries. That is an obstacle to overcome. Biggest improvement a lot of times for teams between week 1 and week 2. It's almost become a cliche. But in comes the Army Black Knights. This is an intriguing matchup. They win at home over Rice, no football powerhouse in their own right. 14-7 the final there. And when you look at it, Tom, Army, we've seen them before. We've seen them play much better football in recent years as they've kind of turned the tables a bit on Navy. Their offense is predicated on their quarterback running what amounts to a wing T. Kelvin Hopkins Jr. is that guy. Tom, he threw the ball 8 times only against Rice. So this is going to be veer right, veer left, power runs up the middle. Playing a team like Army, what does this do for Michigan? What does Michigan need to do?
Well, they need to avoid getting hurt because, I mean, listen, the blocks that they throw, they call them cut blocks. I mean, and you can't block somebody if you're holding somebody up. If another guy's holding you up, you can't block somebody. But they come at they go for your thighs. So this is going to be a fit. So it'd be nice to have all the defensive down linemen survive this thing in terms of from a health standpoint. Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to, not give up more than 3 yards of carry because they're not going to, they'll probably, all Army wants to do is get 3 to 4 yards of carry. They figure they're just going to retain the ball. So the defensive line is going to have to play well. Obviously, the secondary is not probably going to be tested.
No,
from a pass coverage standpoint. But in the secondary, Michigan's got to get continued good secondary play from. Obviously, Lavert Hill is back there; he's a veteran. But when Vincent Gray, who took over that other slot, who kind of traded on and off with Ambry Thomas. Ambry Thomas wasn't expected to start. He had colitis. He lost all his weight. We were thinking the Rutgers game he'd be back, and he was player of the game. He had that incredible interception. He challenged himself. He wanted to play in this game, and doggone it, he was there. I give that kid from MLK, Detroit Martin Luther King Highway, a lot of credit. He's a tough dude. So they got to tackle very well and not give up big plays. Just get out of this game. In the vicinity, just get a 31-10. Just survive this game, because you're not going to be able to. You're not strategically going to use this experience to play anybody else like them. There is nobody else like them, and so this is what I hate. I hate this game. Just like playing Air Force a couple years ago, and the Navy's pass. These, the service academies, God bless them, they're gonna fight you, like soldiers. But they're going to create. It's just a pain in the ass to prepare for, because it's so different than anybody else.
Do you fault Jim Harbaugh or Michigan for scheduling a game like this?
Well, I don't even really remember when this thing, how far this thing got scheduled out. I don't know if it was maybe it was in the last few years. I think it was. Mm-hmm. No, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you want a home game, and you want to get a home game, schedule a service academy. That's how you get a home game.
Now, you touched on Don Brown there. So, what you usually do in a base 3-4 defense with their linebackers kind of playing hybrid, sometimes on the ends, and we know what Quiddy Pay can do. We know what Khalid Hudson can do. But in the secondary, do you remove a cornerback? Do you load up 8, 9, even 10 in the box? I mean, how do you expect the strategy to change should Michigan have to adjust to what Army does?
Well, that's a really, really good question, because I know teams that have had starting players removed from the field. I mean, because they're pass cover guys, and all of a sudden, hey, I guess I get this week off because we're playing such and such a team. That happens a lot at the high school level when you see these wing T teams and it removes a player. I really don't know. I do know that Khalid Hudson was in a safety position. I knew that. I said this on Sunday. Don Brown loves to take his best athletes and get them on the field, and that would be 7. He says, I got to have my best athletes on the field, so they're going to be on the field. They're just going to be in different positions, maybe than you'll see them play. I mean, Michigan had the 3 defensive ends lined up, mixing up. So, Don Brown is, obsessed with the sport of football and strategy and coming up with different things. So who knows what you're going to see against Army. I do know that prior to the Air Force game a couple of years ago, he must have said it, 10 times. He said it once that that game had kept him awake all in the off season, because it's just a tough prep.
Tom, one of the things that you and I pride ourselves, I think, in doing this podcast, and why we hope it provides value for our listeners, we thank each and every one of you for tuning in, is the collective calm, the level-headed, the rationalization. And we're going to do this segment, I think, on a regular basis called Overreaction Theater. What is it that you're hearing from fellow Michigan fans and alums, whether it's on the radio, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's just in casual conversation at the bar, coming out of week 1, where you want to say, hey, hold on, pump the brakes, let's not overreact?
Well, first of all, let me set the premise that the Michigan fans, this is like the pot calling the kettle black. They care too much about Michigan football. They're obsessed with it, and when they're looking at things to worry about, they're worried. The worry people. And when Michigan put the ball on the ground, when Shea missed some passes that he should have made, and obviously when you got a Ronnie Bell drop one in the end zone on a post corner route he should have had. You touch the ball, you should catch it. The things that are fixable, they're worried about, and they wanted precision. They want their team to jump out and be good, right? Like Clemson is at the start. Clemson starts out fast. Oklahoma looked out pretty good against U of H, but Michigan notoriously does not start the season well, which is good that they didn't play a good opponent like they did a few years ago in Harbaugh's first game. In fact, they played at Utah and they lost. And we know what happened in their opener last year in South Bend. So they're a slow start out of the gate, and they got worrywart fans, and so they were expecting more RPO and more precision and more and just bigger plays and execution than transpired.
So you talk about that, Tom, and how much of the slow start, people were clamoring for change on offense for Michigan coming out of last season, to be a little less predictable, to have a little bit more pizzazz, to have more speed in space. We keep hearing that term. And Josh Gaddis comes in. I mean, what's the learning curve here for an offensive coordinator to get plays called, to get them executed, to get the right personnel in there? How many games are you willing to give him before this should be up at full speed?
Oh, my God. I mean, it's going to probably take till mid-October. I mean, they're going to have to trudge through the Wisconsin game on September 21st, and they got Rutgers at home. They better be ready by the Iowa game, homecoming on October 5th, a good Iowa team coming to Ann Arbor. So they got 4 or 5 games here, and then unfortunately they're playing a really good Wisconsin team where we can expect this flow, this cadence, to smooth out. I mean, this is a tough learn. There's a lot of, RPO is repass option. It's pulling, in the mesh, pulling the ball out, and that's why the ball went on the turf. It's, the linemen have to learn a different game. But I was pretty pleased. I mean, I saw the ball going in the middle third of the field, thrown in the middle third of the field, executed in the middle third of the field. I saw Tariq Black getting behind the defense. I saw, as we talked about Jim Harbaugh, that Shea, in his very, educated quarterback way, made all the right checks. And then also back to Josh Gaddis, and I don't know if he was just blowing smoke off his butt. He said he just was almost flawless in calling the game. That was a pretty, maybe a bit an overstatement that he made on in the Monday presser, but I thought that was pretty compelling that Jim would say that. So I think they just got to not make the mistakes. There was 8 penalties in the game. Michigan State did 14. So, yeah. I mean, why should Michigan fans complain here? But 8 penalties, they got to clean that up as well.
So this leads me to my next question, which is, what is the biggest question in your mind coming into the season that was answered in week 1, if anything at all? And then what is the biggest remaining unanswered question for you after week 1?
The biggest question I had, the most pleasing thing I saw was the potential of the offense, the fact that they have balance. I mean, we talked about this on Sunday. 200 plus yards on both sides, both running and throwing. And you got the running back situation was my concern. I'm not concerned about that. Not only carrying the mail, I'm talking about Zach Charbonnet, Christian Turner, True Wilson, but blocking and protecting for Shea Patterson. So all good on that one. My concern is that I'd like to see addressed when they play Wisconsin, not to jump past Army and then the bye week, but is be able to stop the run, consistently. I mean, they're going to be tested against Wisconsin with that potent, and what we saw against South Florida. I mean, my word, it's that's going to be, and a great running back. That's going to be really, really big challenge. That D-line, the D-line. If there's something that keep me awake at night, I'm a Michigan fan, Maury Ward Michigan fan. It's the defensive line.
Looking at the consensus Vegas line, Michigan a 22.5-point favorite. Now, I'm going to give us some kudos from a week ago, Tom, and that is we were both correct in that the underdogs would cover each of the point spreads against Michigan and Michigan State. It's a pretty large number against a team that's going to control the football. There'll be a fewer number of possessions, could be lower scoring. That doesn't mean that Michigan won't dominate the game, but 22.5 points to me feels like a lot, beating Army by more than 3 touchdowns. What say you? Final score prediction, Michigan Army.
Oh, I think the 22, I think that's conservative. I think Michigan is going to play a lot better. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at 31-10, to be honest with you. What am I saying? That's 21.
Yeah, that's not a cover, Tom.
Let's go 35-10. 35-10.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I think Michigan's going to win. I think they're going to cover against Army. And the game will go quicker. They won't, Army doesn't throw the ball, so the game will go much quicker. Clock will go quicker.
You know what I've heard? I got to get your thought on this, too. I hear a lot of people bringing up Appalachian State in comparison to Army and what that might mean. And we all know what a nightmare that was. One of the worst losses in Michigan history. Anything to that?
No. That's just fantasy makers. I mean, the Appalachian State, I heard that reunion, I heard all that reminder. That anniversary was like 3 or 4 days ago, which Jack Eberly reminded me about in 2000, that infamous game in 2007. No, because Appalachian State was a different team. That team could That team could throw the ball. That team had some balance.
Mm-hmm.
Army is one-dimensional team. Michigan notoriously, historically, are pretty good against one-dimensional teams. They really are. And that's what Army is.
I agree with you. I'm just pulling your chain a little bit. But I did hear people say this, the kind of underdog thing coming in. Everybody's going to be rooting for them. But I'm with you on this. I was impressed by Michigan's ability to run the football. I'm buying what you're selling on Zach Charbonnet. And I think because Michigan is able to do that, establish some balance on offense, I like them to win going away. I'll call it 38-14. I'll take the Wolverines to cover. I don't feel real good about it. I don't feel we're great about it, but a similar final score to Tom. We both like Michigan, and we both like Michigan to win big. Before we switch topics, always want to let you get this last word in on the Wolverines, Tom. Anything I didn't ask you about, anything we didn't talk about or cover that needs to be mentioned?
Well, I mean, I guess I just want to reemphasize what people were concerned about all summer, that Jim Harbaugh there's no way that he would yield the play calling to Josh Gaddis, and just to confirm, he has yielded it. So, and we knew that all summer. I mean, the players said that. So, I mean, this is Josh's team offensively, and I think it's going to be a great match.
Does that make Jim Harbaugh a better head coach that he doesn't have to worry about that?
Absolutely. A head football coach in college football at that level, you basically have as many as 40 to 50 coaches. When you add all the quality control guy, the analysts, there's a 40, 50 member staff, and you're the orchestra leader. You know what I mean? This is not like D3 where they got 8 or 10 coaches total, and they're all doing everything, including setting up the cameras in the press box. Mm-hmm. This is a CEO, and he needs to be the CEO and let his experts, exercise their expertise.
So, Tom, you'll be at the game?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. High noon start. High noon start on Fox. Tom will be in the box. He'll be getting post-game sound. We'll break that down for you in this weekend's podcast. And Tom might even get a question or two in. He sometimes does that. He's a little sneaky and stealth about it. He's Tom Crawford. I'm Ryan Schuling. We thank you for tuning in. This is the Great Lakes Divide podcast. It is brought to you by the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Just got the music selections from Heather Frary today for our intro and outro music. Want to remind you, if you're in the Lansing area for any reason, if you're coming into tailgate, if you're just passing through town, just take Washington off 496, go south to Rio Town, the marketplace. That's where it's located. You go far to the back and you take a journey back through time. There's vinyl from Tom Crawford's era when he had the high fidelity stereo in his dorm room at Michigan. There's the new releases on vinyl and CDs as well. Tell you a little bit more about that as Heather provides the information for us. New music every Friday. You can check them out. And once again, we want to thank the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Your chance to visit, stop by. And again, everything you could possibly want or ask for in vinyl. If they don't have it, Heather will special order it for you. So now we turn our attention to Michigan State, and a lot more drama coming out of the weekly press conference for Mark Dantonio than there was from Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. Now, this is in the wake of a 28-7 victory over Tulsa. It was a dominating defensive performance that, but for a personal foul late hit on the quarterback penalty by Kenny Willekes, might have been a shutout, but Kenny gets not only Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week honors, he gets National Collegiate Football Defensive Player of the Week honors. That's how good he was, how much of a difference he made. He scored a touchdown defensively. He was a disruptor. He was a nightmare, and that is a show, a preview, coming attractions for Kenny Willekes. Jacob Panashuk on the other side. I mean, Joe Bocci, you look at this front seven, you look at this entire defense, and I'll start with the grades I asked Tom about it. It's easy. I'm going to go down the list. Bullet point for me, defense, A. Without the Willekes penalty, A+. Special teams, A. 4 made field goals by Coughlin, a blocked punt. A tremendous punting from Jake Hartbarger. So A. Offense, I'll go D. Just a step above D- because they did have an opening scoring drive. But aside from that, this was abysmal. And you know how I'm right? Because Mark Dantonio said the exact same thing. Here's how he opened his press conference without even answering a single question. Now, you'll hear our good friend, Tom's and mine, Jack Ebling, interject, but then Mark builds on the point, and this was some scorched earth on his own offense. Here it is.
And I can say this, the football is a game of effort, toughness, and knowing what to do. And half of our team figured that out, half of it didn't. We will make sure that other half gets figured out this week. So that's my message to our football team.
How important is it to get more push up front from the offensive line? I think the tailbacks were 30 carries, 67 yards.
Yeah, not good enough. We've got to get on the right people. And, as I just said, you got to know where to go. You got to play with effort and toughness. And too much of that was, to me, was lacking. And I'm going to call it as I see it up here right now. So they've got to send a message to our football team. And we've got a long season ahead of us, and we can play much better than that. But I was disappointed in the effort when I see guys running routes that are not at full speed. I see guys blocking at the point of attack, throwing a shoulder in there and not addressing a defender. Can't happen. We predicated ourselves on being tough here. I don't care any way you cut it. And so that message is going to get sent. Whether it's public or not, I'm sure nobody appreciates us running the ball for 67 yards, especially the guy in charge. So we'll fix that.
So, Tom, bringing you in to this conversation, right off the bat, we knew this was going to be an interesting 15, 20 minutes with Mark Dantonio. Sometimes he goes through the motions. Sometimes he's just kind of giving you coach speak. But once in a while, he uses that as a platform to send a message to his players, maybe his coaches, maybe himself, definitely the fans, and certainly the media. When you heard Mark Dantonio open with that bomb on his offense, what went through your mind?
Well, that he was pissed off. I mean, he's always has a chip on his shoulder and be a snarl and have that scowl, kind of scowl look and everything. But he was really irritated with his team. The fans booed them, which I'm not. I don't care what the situation is. I mean, college football players are amateur athletes, and I'm not in favor of booing.
I agree.
But he basically endorsed the fan reaction to their team on Friday night by basically critiquing every element. I mean, the fact that, and it was lack of effort, which is very unlike Michigan State. Hey, I'm not a Michigan State fan by any stretch. We know that. But I've always respected that they're a gritty team and they bring it every snap. I mean, there's never a lack of effort. They might be a lack of talent. We know that they don't get the top-notch athletes, but they're always gritty. And the fact that he said basically half of the team was phoning it in, to paraphrase here, really got my attention. So when he looked at that film, boy, he must have saw some stuff that it didn't even sound that bad in his post game on Friday night as it did, on Tuesday.
Well, I'll say this in real time, and I know you watched the game as well, but I called out Jordan Reed. I told you that in our Sunday podcast. He got turnstiled 3 times. Now, Dantonio didn't necessarily call guys out by name, but I will. You looked at guys running their routes, maybe cutting them short, maybe not running them crisply or as quickly as they needed to.
Right.
Brian Lewerke not having time to throw. It adjusted. I think it impacted his ability to deliver the football accurately. And Mark Dantonio went out of his way to say that he thought Lewerke played okay under the circumstances. They are shuffling on the offensive line. He didn't want to talk too much about A.J. Arcuri being out, but he is. Cole Chewins, who's, I'm sorry, got to say it, constant injury bug biting him.
Yeah,
again, can't stay healthy, can't stay on the field. And even when he is, but what good is he if he can't play? I think Tyler Higbee had some issues as well. I mean, this offensive line, Tom, let me tell you why the fans were booing, and let me tell you why in this particular instance, I'm okay with it. Usually I'm with you, and I agree. But this was the point of emphasis all off season. Mark Dantonio doubled down. He shuffled the chairs on the Titanic. He moved everybody around, Dave Warner and Brad Salem and Bowman and the whole outfit. And he said, these are my guys. I ride or die with them. We got to the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl twice, the college football playoff with these guys, and I'm not budging. I'm not blinking. I'm not bringing in a new mind offensively the way that Michigan did. We can win with what we've got, and darn it, what we saw, Tom, was the exact same crap that finished the season and where I was embarrassed to watch the Redbox Bowl against Oregon. It was that bad.
Yeah, well, I think, the fact that he called out his own coaching staff. I mean, that is not Mark Dantonio like at all. I think there's Michigan State fans. They have these defining moments where they can't get it out of their mind that, here we go again. They think back to the Arizona State game in Tempe last year when Tyler Higbee would get blown up. I mean, that offensive line just got blown up at critical times.
Yes.
The Rutgers game, and then the Red Box Bowl. There's 3 glaring games that Michigan State fans can't get out of their mind, and then they watch this thing last Friday night where they're off. Now their sacred wide receiving core wasn't even playing well. The running back situation wasn't getting any holes, so Connor Hayward, actually, I thought he played all right, but they don't have – I said it the other day, there's nobody on that offense that can threaten anybody. They don't have that kind of talent. But if you combine that with lack of effort that Mark Dantonio was recognizing, I know some of those wide receiver routes, then you got big time problems on offense for Michigan State.
Yeah, I got to go back to something you said, Tom, which is that, this is a unit. It is a machine that when it's firing on all cylinders, you see what the product is. It's not any one guy. It's a collection, and you just touched on almost all of them, and I'll disagree. I don't think Connor Hayward played a good game. I think he missed a couple of holes maybe that were there that he didn't cut toward. I know that Mark Dantonio mentioned that as well. The offensive line got pushed back on their asses way many more times than I think anybody anticipated coming into this game against a team like Tulsa.
Horrible.
Yeah, it was horrible. And this is where Mark Dantonio, he really likes to draw in the psychological aspect of this game because, like you said, they're not getting the 5-star athletes. They're not pulling guys from Ohio that, oh, do I go to Ohio State or Michigan State? I'll go to Michigan State instead of play for the Buckeyes. Those guys are playing for the Buckeyes. They get by on grit, hustle, determination, effort, execution, physicality, toughness, mentally, physically, all of the above. And he said something about the fog of war here, the physicality, and a Marine colonel that he brought in to talk to the team. And here's that comment.
Talked a lot about the fog of war, and we had Colonel Barris in, so from the Marines talked to us this spring, and he's exactly right. Plane will not survive contact. So at times, you get out there and you have great intentions. I'm not saying our intentions are bad. We had great intentions, but we didn't get on the right people, or we lacked in terms of physicality. And this game demands that. We had a devotion. We have a devotional every day in our staff meeting. Today's devotional, Chuck Bullock put on a video of Buck Nystrom. This game demands that. It's different than tennis. It's different than basketball. It's different than any other sport, maybe with the exception of rugby. Okay, this game demands that, and we need to get that. Not from one side of the ball, from all sides of the ball. Not from one guy, from all 11 guys on the field at every specific time. And that's my message.
And we know, Tom, with Ken Manny, the physical strength and conditioning coach, who is legendary by now in Michigan State circles. Nick Saban wanted to take him so badly to Alabama, he wouldn't go.
Ex-Marine. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the mentality we're talking about. And here's where, again, my gears are grinding as a person who watches, follows, covers, roots for Michigan State, and where I share this with Mark Dantonio. You had a whole offseason, Tom, to stew about how you finished a mediocre season. You had a Friday night game in front of your own fans against a Tulsa team that you should bushwhack 42-7, and Mark Dantonio said that himself in the presser this week. And you lollygag around, to borrow the term from Major League, and you go through the motions, like you said. How is that even possible when they had so much to prove, so many naysayers to shut up, and all they did was fuel the fire?
No, those are all valid points, Ryan. But keep in mind, let's go back to the historical element for a second. Look at what Michigan State does in these particularly Friday night openers, the majority of what they've been doing since 2011. They don't play well on Friday night in the opener.
Yeah.
And then, sure enough, they get better. I mean, I go back to 2013, that Western Michigan game when, the defense scored a couple touchdowns. The offense couldn't move the ball across the street. and they ended up being Big Ten champions. So you can keep that in mind. But the fact that their offensive line could not move Tulsa, what's going to happen when you play Wisconsin and Ohio State back to back? I mean, I'm serious. I mean, it's all relative. I think we went into this game saying, how are we going to evaluate Michigan State after the Tulsa game? Well, we're going to say if they blow them off the ball, then hey, potentially they could be all right. But we don't. But that's Tulsa. But if they can't move the ball and they can't push the line against Tulsa, then they really, really got problems. And that's what people are thinking right now.
Yeah, what are they going to do against the teams you mentioned? What are they going to do against Western Michigan? That's a 7:30 start on Big Ten Network this Saturday. They've got an experienced quarterback in John Wassink. Now, they made him look bad in the past as well, but they've got still a bell cow running back and Levante Bellamy. So offensively, Michigan State will probably be tested a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball, but we're not even worried about that. Western Michigan, they're going to have some athletes on defense. Typically, though, they've been undersized. This should be a team that Michigan State should have sustained drives against. But again, got to go back to Dantonio's comments. This was, in my opinion, him throwing down the gauntlet, him setting the stage, him sending a message. And here he is talking. I believe this is a question by Matt Charbonneau, Detroit News, about criticism from the fans, what they're looking for from the offense, the booing, everything about that, and his breakdown and explanation as to what makes an offense tick.
People see the product. They don't understand the process. They see football as a game. Hey, run that play again, which gained 20 yards. Running backs have to break tackles at times. They have to be able to run through the smoke. When there is something, you have to be able to block the point of attack. There are things that have changed. But football is a game of repetition, like I keep saying it. You're not going to just say, hey, let's run that play. Nobody else has ever run that before. I don't think that exists in this sport. I think that believe that or people are a little bit naive. This is, as I said earlier, this is about hard work and execution. In terms of, you've got to make, I'm not holding our coaches accountable as well in this. It's about play selection and play call, play selection. And we need to do a better job in that as well. So I'm not shying away from that responsibility. But at the end of the day, there's only so many ways to skin a cat. At the end of the day, you better skin the cat. Here's another good quote for you.
I'm going to ask real quick,
Let me write that down. Okay.
And I really like the reference there to skinning a cat. There's only so many ways to skin a cat. There's only so many plays they can come up with. There's only so many different types of looks that they can give. But, Tom, what I'll keep coming back to is that when Michigan had problems, we got to compare the two because these are the two teams you and I cover.
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
the Jim Harbaugh,
There's nothing wrong with that.
Jim Harbaugh was humble enough to admit, you know what, maybe we do got to change some things around here. Maybe there's an improvement to be made. And for whatever reason, Coach Dantonio, you can call it loyalty, you can call it stubbornness. It's probably both. Didn't want to change. So where is this imagination going to come from? Where's this creativity going to come from? I know the question that I asked him when I was there in East Lansing after the opener about tempo, he does want to go up tempo. But if you're going to do that, then execution becomes even more at a premium, Tom, right? Because you're doing things in a smaller time frame and it's harder to do.
Yeah, but sometimes when you see these up-tempo teams, and Michigan was the same way, they're using as much as of the play clock as they did if they went into a standard huddle. So it's not like they're doing the no huddle anyway, Michigan State. But the up-tempo wasn't there. I think back to Mark Dantonio. Maybe it's the 2016 season. Was that the 3-win season? And then they had the 7-win season in 18. Maybe he's feeling self-pressure on him, on himself. Maybe maybe this is an ego thing. Maybe his legacy he feels is going to be is in jeopardy right now. I mean, because what if Michigan State is a 7 or 8 win team at best, or what if they're even a 6-win team this year for Michigan State in 2019? Maybe he's feeling it. I think there was a level of insecurity of how he feels about this team that was demonstrated to me at that press conference yesterday with the Duffy.
I couldn't agree more. And again, all he can do is say what he said. He has what he has, both in terms of personnel in players and coaches on his staff. This is it. And he talked about the offense, breaking it down, what they need to do, sustain drives, executing, but then where does it lead? Here were the final comments from him that I thought stood out to me.
There were some good things on offense. We had an 18-play drive, but we got to finish. We're in the red zone 2 times on 4th and 1. We got to get the 1 yard, like I said. If you get the 1 yard, you go in and score a touchdown. That game's probably 42-0 or 42-7. Okay, everybody feels a little happier. Okay, but it is what it is. And this is a result-oriented business. I understand that. So we have to make sure that we're pushing forward like in that endeavor, and I got to send a message. Okay, and sometimes I get a little irritable before I walk into these press conferences, so I take it with me. Sometimes I get irritable walking out. Okay, got to take that with me too. But we're going to get it right.
So he makes no secret sending a message to the offense. And here's another. I'm going to take your comment, Tom, a step further, because this is a defense with what we've seen, with what we know from a year ago, and the guys that are returning and the ones that have stepped up to fill the holes of those that have left, like Kari Willis. This has a chance to be really a generational defense, a national championship caliber defense. But we're not hearing about Michigan State being even in the conversation right now for Indianapolis for a college football playoff spot, even though they have the defense to do it, even though, in my opinion, they have the special teams to certainly do it. This offense is a drag on the entire program right now, and Mark Dantonio's had it. But again, I'm trying to reconcile that with no changes on that side of the ball. So where does it go from here? He can call it out, but what is the ceiling for this offense, Tom? As you, and I love that you have this objective perspective. You're not emotionally involved, but what you see talent-wise from Michigan State, what is the limit for them on offense?
Oh God, I think there's a lot. I think there's a strong limit. I think this is a 20 to 22 point team offense at best. I mean, I think they're going to have to win games 17-7. And back to the defense, Ryan. I think that front seven is freaking lights out, like 65-66 team. I mean, Josh Butler gave up a couple. I'm not saying the secondary is not good. But if there's something that's vulnerable on the Michigan State defense, what if they give up a couple plays in their secondary when you have such a lousy offense? Then they're going to be in a whole pack of trouble. So they're going to have to be flawless on defense, and they're going to have to 3-and-out their offense, and serve it up where they have a short field. Because I don't see this Michigan State offense being a 70 to 80 yard driving team in 12 plays. Do you?
I don't, and that's why, again, what's the magic number for them? I think a year ago, you kind of nailed it right there. It was somewhere in the vicinity of 17 plus that the defense was going to do its job. They were going to hold a team maybe to single digits, and in one case, that wasn't enough. A 9-6 loss to Nebraska, and you look at the Oregon game and another one, and it's just it blows your mind, and it's incredible to think about. As I look back, this offense has never been lights out, but there's been talent. There's been a heck of a lot of talent. Tom, when you talk about Connor Cook at quarterback, Le'Veon Bell, Jeremy Langford at running back, Felton Davis, wide receiver.
Felton Davis is that's going to be a big void from last year. I truly think that him not being there, because I don't necessarily think, that Cody White is. I mean, I think is he the best deep guy that they have? And if he is, he's not a burner by any means.
Well, he was a ghost in this last game, Tom. I mean, let's call it what it is. It just looked like he was out of sorts, in a funk. And this was a guy that when Felton Davis got hurt last year, and even before that, Lewerke and him, if anything, those two were clicking, and that was not the case last Friday night.
No, most Speedy Naylor, maybe get him out there. I don't know. I don't think schematically and talent-wise, when you look at their offense, I don't think they scare anybody on their schedule offensively.
And I don't know, do they scare Western Michigan? I think that's the thing, and that's their next opponent.
I should be more savvy on Western Michigan. I mean, it's still. I mean, let's be real. I mean, those 85 scholarship guys, apples to apples. I mean, Michigan State's got a lot more talent than Western Michigan. Now, let's be real. And they're playing at home in East Lansing. And I think that their coaching staff in particular the head coach, challenge this team. So I think Michigan State as a unit, both sides of the ball are going to come out spitting nails, and I think that's going to work against Western. They're not going to catch Michigan State being soft, I don't think.
Well, and that'll be the message in practice all week long. We know that. I am still very concerned about the running game for Michigan State. It's always been predicated on establishing some kind of ground game, tempo or no, swing passes, creativity, jet sweeps. Michigan State fans don't want to hear about that, but Connor Hayward has got to bust loose. He's got to carry for more than 3 yards a touch. Ladarius Jefferson has explosiveness. We need to see him out in space. Get him the football. Get him some more touches. And Elijah Collins was a guy that received some praise from Mark Dantonio as well, and he said, point blank, and he tipped his hand that Collins is going to get more touches this upcoming week.
He scored a touchdown, got called back.
Penalty.
What was it? 30 carries is 67 yards, so that's barely,
a little more than 2 yards a carry.
2 yards.
That's atrocious.
Wow. That's bad. Against Tulsa.
Yeah, right.
Tulsa.
I know. Well, let's get to the predictions.
That's what brought out the Boo Birds.
Yeah, it did. Western Michigan, now I'm looking at this point spread, and again, points scare me for Michigan State against anybody as a favorite these days, even with their defense. Consensus in Vegas right now is 16 points. Tom, we'll start with your prediction. Final score, MSU and Western.
I got barely covering 24-7 Michigan State.
You said 24-7?
Yeah, that's 17. Is that a push? What is it, 16 or 17?
It's 16 consensus, so yeah, you got Michigan State barely covering. I think, again, I'm always looking at backdoor covers on these, even though Michigan State didn't allow that against Tulsa. I think the offense is a tick better. I think they play tougher, a little bit easier to move the football maybe against a Western defense, but I don't think they pile up the points. I'll take them to win, but I'll take Western to cover. 27-13, my final score for Michigan State. And what do you think is going to happen if that's the case? If we get basically what amounts to be a carbon copy of Tulsa in the winning margin? I mean, are the fans, are the natives going to be restless, or are they going to be going nuts? Are they going to be booing again?
Oh, absolutely. I think, they'll be restless. They'll all be lubed up and revved up. I mean, there are a lot of alcohol consumption at the Tulsa game for people that I heard that were at the game and said there was a lot of drunk people. And so they'll just, drink their way through to 7:30 and they'll be an angry drunk if it's that. Yeah,
a lot of time to tailgate with another night game, and that might be a factor. Tom, great point by you. Big Ten Network, 7:30 start time as the Western Michigan Broncos come to town for Michigan State. Once again, Tom Crawford, he'll be down in Ann Arbor for that high noon start against his favorite opponent, the Service Academy's Army, coming to town. Got to give you the Jerry Springer final thought here, Tom. What do you want to leave the listeners with?
What do I want to leave the listeners with? My thought about Michigan State is that Spartan fans, take heed. They'll be back. Things will get better, and I think that they'll get a little bit better against Western. I think they'll finally be at full scale cylinder, all cylinders hitting for the Arizona State game. That's how I see it.
Well, that'll be the time to do it, and you don't want to view Western Michigan as any kind of cakewalk. I think fans have reason for concern, and when Mark Dantonio confirms that in this week's press conference, I mean, I can't stress that enough. It's not like he was poo-pooing the idea that this offense was struggling, because it point blank was. So, again, our thanks, Tom Crawford. Always great talking to you. We'll recap the games coming up this weekend. Enjoy your trip to Ann Arbor, my friend.
All right, Ryan. Good job. Look forward to it.
And for Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. A sound you hear as we go out here on the Great Lakes Divide are brought to you by the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Special new release from Pearl Jam live at Easy Street. The sounds that you're hearing as well are thanks to Heather Ferrari for her support. Support them back. Support local business. The Record Lounge in the Rio Town Marketplace, just south of 496 on Washington. Until next time, enjoy the games, everyone.